What if I said that you, a single mundane being, could change society just by changing your mindset? Good morning. My name is Nawal, and today I'm here to speak about a topic which has crossed all of our minds, yet we're still hesitant to speak about, which is societal norms and conservatism. Now, before I begin, I'd like to ask you all a very simple question, which is, how many of you are what society expects you to be? Okay, cool. Now, moving on, I'm going to first begin by defining what societal norms are. Societal norms, according to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, means the informal rules that governs behavior in groups and societies. Now, in simple words, societal norms is adapting to our peers and our environment because it gives us a sense of belonging. Now, it's human nature to want to belong somewhere, but how does this change society? Sometimes we hold on to medieval values because we want to respect and honor our ancestors. While that's respectable, we often forget that when time changes, people need to change accordingly. What I mean by this is that every single proclamation from the past cannot be enforced in today's world just because you're afraid of change. The generation is changing, people are becoming more open, and these values hold us back from accepting people for who and how they are. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, wow, these are extremely vague terms. To put this into perspective, I'm going to ask you a question. Of course, it makes sense to hold on to something that gave you a bite of what peace tastes like, but don't you want to know what the whole slice tastes like? Now, even though these sound like vague terms, I'm going to simplify your thinking process by giving you an example. Why is it hard or odd to find a boy playing with girly toys? He's just a kid, he's learning, he's curious, or maybe he wants to have fun. But society thinks, what's wrong with him? A boy playing with girly toys? Unacceptable. Throw the whole family away. So now this begs the question, why do people not stand up for things that they know are morally right? Or why do they hide away from things that they know are morally wrong? Well, the answer is that humans are easily tractable by nature, which means if the peers look like they know what they're doing, they're going to believe that it's right. And a very good example would be social media. However, if you look at this chart, you can see how happiness levels have drastically increased over the years because of people changing traditional rules, because they know that people would feel more accepted if they did so. Now, I'm going to give you my experience with societal norms. This might sound really weird, but I have never lived in India or Dubai, but I've lived in Japan for most of my life. If you ask a Japanese person how common it was to find a foreigner there, they'd give you a pretty much 1% chance. Now, me and my friends, growing up in Japan, we never had a culture we felt like we could fit into. We're all Indian ethnically, and we're not Japanese either, so we didn't really have a culture we really fit into. We wanted to be part of the Indian culture at first, but we didn't really have much Indian influence over there, so we tried to move on to Japanese influence. We didn't feel comfortable because, first of all, we obviously don't look Japanese. We didn't speak Japanese how Japanese people spoke it, so we just gave up. But when we turned 10, we decided to attend a Japanese festival. Now here, we were expecting lots of strange looks and questions asked, but to our surprise, we were accepted and welcomed by the Japanese people. On this day, we learned that cultural appropriations don't define who you are. When I moved to Dubai this year, the first thing I noticed was how different people's mannerisms were everywhere. People here were more friendly and outgoing, and people in Japan were more polite and friendly. And I also realized that things that were morally right in one country were morally wrong in another, which made me think, what is right and what is wrong? Now, moving on, I'm going to address a few issues that societal norms influences, and I'd like to start with the common men don't cry. Society has deemed men as very strong individuals with only positive characteristics. Men aren't weak, men aren't vulnerable, and something a man definitely does not do is cry, because crying is weak. Do we, as a society, not realize how awful it must be to have to hide your emotions because you're scared that you will be otherwise degraded just for being human? Let's change this. Let's accept people for how they are and who they are instead of who we want them to be. Now, moving on, I'd like to address another issue, which is domestic violence. Societal norms doesn't directly impact domestic violence, sure, but in certain regions such as India or Nigeria, it is the very reason. Okay, so this image shows a husband and a wife, and I thought this perfectly depicted exactly what the perpetrator thinks in these situations, that they have to do it, and if they don't do it, people will question why they don't do it, or ask them, why aren't you like people around you, and consider them an outcast. Now, if you've really thought about this, this could be easily prevented just by changing your mindset. We don't question it because it's a part of how society has always been, so why would we? It's a psychological cycle that becomes a norm, and it doesn't stop until someone decides, I'm going to stop this because it's wrong. Who decides what's right and who decides what's wrong? We do, and at some point we decided that this was okay, and now we have the power to change it. Norms don't stay the same unless we want them to. Do we want it to? But back to the focus of my speech. I'm here today to remind you that you have the power to change society just by changing your mindset. We're forcing individuals to be brought up in a certain way, a way society wants them to be brought up, and not in a way in which they want to express themselves. We're assigning them a character that they're subconsciously forced to become. In the spirit of making this world a better place, let's change this. Let's accept people for who they are and how they are, instead of who we want them to be. And as cliche as this may sound, you're just one person in this world, but your influence can affect a million. Thank you.